On March 5, 1964, a daughter was born to the Rands couple, husband Howard Lee and wife Mabel Walls. She was named Rhonda. The family was then residing in Casey County, Kentucky. The child had a classic childhood, a nurturing environment, games, dolls, friends, local school, etc. She graduated from that institution in 1982. What followed was a 30-year career in a popular firm selling marketing, packaging, and printing services. The woman was respected by friends, relatives, and colleagues, noted for her kindness and decency. Before meeting this man, Rhonda had already had the experience of a failed marriage and 4 children born in this union. She and Philip attended the same golf course. They met there by chance. A spark ran between them, and the relationship developed instantly. Already on the 5th date, he made her an offer to become his wife, to which he received consent. Rhonda was not embarrassed by the fact that Philip also had a broken marriage and 2 teenage children, Jenna and David. But those chose to live with their birth mother, Christy Woodpoe, in Indiana. Jenna was 3 years older than her brother. As a child, she was often left home alone. Her parents were often missing at work or at some events. Devil did not receive the necessary care, and his sister was more involved in her own affairs. Formal custody of the children was entrusted to their half-sister, but she simply left one day, unable to bear the strain. Jenna and Devil took it hard. They were basically on their own. Out of the neglect, a childcare service noticed. At that time, their parents had already divorced. The father was disappearing with other women, and the mother was working all day, or went to the bar for another batch of antidepressants. The service set a condition to the mother that she should either take better care of the children, or find guardians, or the children would be transferred to an orphanage. Philip intervened in the situation and took them in with him and his new wife, Rhonda. The move took place in April 2016. Their stepmother was already 52 years old at that time, and she accepted these children as relatives. She welcomed the stepchildren warmly and provided them with a comfortable and safe home. The stepdaughter studied at school with satisfactory and good grades and was respected by teachers. However, she behaved in an ugly manner at home. Especially the relationship with her father and his new wife worsened when the girl had a 20-year-old suitor, Kenneth Nike. Jenna was underage, and this relationship aroused the anger of Philip and Rhonda. Next was a dating ban. Eventually, there were frequent scandals, and the father threatened his 15-year-old daughter that he would report her boyfriend to the police. Also from Jenna, took away mobile gadgets and laptop and introduced a special regime for her. After school at home, no walking, at 22.30 wake up. All these measures forced Gina to promise at a family meeting that meetings with Kenneth would be a thing of the past. However, it was a deception, and the girl ran off to secret dates with him at the slightest opportunity. On September 1st, 2016, at about 4 p.m., David Oakley came home from school and immediately heard the desperate howling of their dogs in the basement. He went down there and discovered Rhonda's dead body. Immediately, he got up and went to his neighbors and called 911 from them. The police arrived about 20 minutes later and were left to pronounce the woman dead. Upon examination, they found deep stab wounds on her neck. It was clear that she had been killed with extreme violence. They immediately searched the house to check the robbery. All valuables and money were untouched, except Rhonda's car wasn't in the garage. In the kitchen were confused by 2 facts. In the trash can, a lot of vomit, and a large knife for cutting meat disappeared. It was thought to be the murder weapon. Around 6 p.m., Philip arrived home from work. When questioned by the investigators, he said that on that dark day, his daughter had also disappeared. She did not show up at school and did not answer her phone. Police have suggested that the girl was kidnapped by those who killed her stepmother and might be about to demand a ransom. The unhappy man had no idea that such a black day would come and someone would commit such a terrible atrocity because the family had no enemies or ill-wishers. Then he thought of Kenneth. He had had a heated conversation with him not so long ago. His father had told him to leave his daughter alone or he'd report her to the police. Although Jenna had promised to break off her relationship with Kenneth, Philip doubted it. And there is a great possibility that the daughter ran away with him, and he himself, and committed the murder of Rhonda because he saw her as an obstacle to dating with a 15-year-old girl. The police were faced with the task of finding Kenneth Nike quickly, and in the course of the search, the following facts came to light. On August 31st at 3 a.m., the wanted man flew from Indiana to Lexington, Kentucky. Upon arrival, He took a cab and drove to the Oakley home. On September 1st, he and Jenna entered a store in the town of Danville. This was witnessed by the clerk and camera footage. The couple left the store in a vehicle described as belonging to Rhonda. In examining the camera footage, it was clear that Jenna was not anxious, not nervous, and walked in a relaxed gait. There was no perception that she had been abducted. Based on these points, the investigation came up with another version. This girl was not a victim of kidnapping, but an accomplice to the crime. To test the hypothesis, they searched her room and found a diary with horrifying confessions. "I love Kenneth madly. I want to see him, and I will see him. I don't care about inhibitions. I'm so sick of my dad and his new girlfriend. I resent the hell out of them, especially my stepmother. I hate her so much. Dad doesn't care about me. David's in that coalition too. I'd like to take them all out and start with Rhonda or Dad. I'll think about it. When they're gone, Kenneth will move in with me and we'll live together happily ever after. There will be no hindrance to our love." The diary ended with a detailed scheme of action for eliminating inconvenient people. After reading these horrors, Philip fainted. Could it be that his Jenna was a cold-blooded killer? The distraught daughter, meanwhile, according to the latest records, decided to take out her own father first. The plan was as follows. At 4 o'clock in the morning, she goes down to the basement, drops something, screams in pain, calls her father for help. He comes down. She stabs him in the neck from behind. Next on the list is the hated stepmother. Her turn comes between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning. While she sleeps, you need to stab her with the same knife to make a sieve. Rounding out the list is the sibling. He's a long sleeper. That should do the trick. He should also receive fatal stab wounds in his sleep. The found records were attached to a criminal case in which Jenna was the prime suspect. Philip provided the detectives with Kenneth's phone number so that he could be tracked down and detained, both himself and his underage girlfriend. And the guy didn't even realize to change the SIM card and take another phone. After a couple of days, the police figured out the exact coordinates of the fugitives and took them on September 4th in the Tucumcari district of New Mexico. Police contacted colleagues, reported the suspect's details. Stolen car Rhonda found in a parking lot near the hotel, where in one of the rooms was a couple. Kenneth and Gina were caught sleeping. An arrest was made immediately, and they were taken to the station in separate cars. They were to be extradited to the United States. The stolen car was thoroughly searched, but nothing suspicious was found, neither the murder weapon nor any other evidence. Kenneth realized he had made key mistakes and had no desire to sit in jail. In return for this hell, in his opinion, suicide was better. In the holding cell, he attempted to hang himself, but officers arrived in time and removed him from the noose. He was hospitalized. On the floor of the cell was found a note in which the guy confessed that with his beloved acted clearly according to the plan and that everything was his fault alone. Meanwhile, his date was being transported to Kentuckiana. Information about Kenneth's incident and his testimony was withheld. The officers wanted to see how the suspect would behave. She did not deny the act and laid out all the details. The night before the murder, Kenneth showed up at her door. They greeted the dawn together. Then they spent the day together, so she skipped class. Rhonda arrived at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and ran into Kenneth at home on her way to the basement. A scandal broke out. At the screaming, Jenna came running in and tried to strangle her stepmother. Kenneth helped and put so much pressure on Rhonda's neck that she passed out. The victim was immobilized and helpless. Jenna, with the same kitchen knife, inflicted multiple deep wounds to the woman's neck, resulting in her death. Kenneth saw everything in detail. He felt sick, vomiting directly into the kitchen bucket. The perpetrator wrapped the knife in a bag and later threw it away when she and her lover were far away from the scene in a diner. She was unaware that her lover was in critical condition in the hospital at the time. Investigators charged him with first-degree murder. Only the suspect never learned of his sentence. He was on life support for a month and a half before passing away. His plan to take his own life did come to fruition. The first court hearing took place at the end of October 2016. The suspect was formally charged with the murder of her stepmother. The girl acted in collusion with an adult boyfriend and also stole a car. She was placed in juvenile detention and had her bail option revoked. Her father said that despite what happened, she is still his own daughter, only she has no excuse, and justice must impose the most appropriate sentence possible. The fact of Kenneth's death was concealed from Jenna, and the news was announced only at the court hearing. From such information, the girl fainted. She was brought to her senses. She cried and became hysterical and did not calm down for a long time. Medics had to intervene and administer a small dose of diazepam. In January 2019, the suspect officially confessed to what she had done, first-degree manslaughter. A little later, in February, right in the courtroom, tearfully apologized and said she was in a lot of pain. Philip Oakley was not surprised by such confessions and said that the authorities must urgently correct the system, which is obliged to be a guarantor of safety for adults living with such teenagers. In some ways, the father is guilty of himself, and the daughter has repeatedly given warning signs with her behavior. He ignored them and did not notice the girl's problems. For example, it was required to immediately go to the police when they found out about her connection with Kenneth, and procrastination cost Rhonda her life. The lawyer for Jenna Oakley was appointed Susan Hooper, who specialized in mitigation of punishments. The lawyer based her case on the girl's lifelong history of abuse, neglect, and lack of basic civil rights. Hooper cited the following factors and documents as the defendant's defense. Society must wonder what motivated a 15-year-old girl to go on a gruesome crime, even though she had never before exhibited such aggression and violent tendencies. Jenna had no criminal record, good grades in school, and respect from classmates and teachers. None of her relatives showed up for subsequent court hearings. The father recanted, and the biological mother is simply no longer interested in the fate of her daughter. Even in particularly complicated cases, where the defendants were adult men, accused under very serious articles, their mothers or fathers came to court. The relatives were interested in how the investigation was progressing. Jenna, on the other hand, experienced a lack of any support from her family. A lot of records documenting the girl's problems as a child. As a child, she was repeatedly abandoned by her parents. They showed no regard for her physical and psychological well-being. Records from child care services, medical records reflecting the first few years of the defendant's life. The records showed that the girl did not receive proper assistance and care, and that it was not even her parents who brought her to the clinic. Recorded testimonies from people around Jenna, friends, nannies, teachers. Everyone spoke of her with respect. Interview notes from her older half-sister. She lived with her for several years. Turns out their home was characterized by insecurity during that time. After the divorce, Christy took a job as a warden at an Indiana prison, had an affair with a fellow inmate, and bailed him out. The man came to live with her after his release. Jenna was 3 years old and saw all the misdeeds of her mom's boyfriend. Regular stealing, drinking, bringing in prostitutes and drug addicts. One day, he ran away with the landlady's money, the neighbor's testimony during that time period. He said that the parents were almost constantly absent. Little Jenna and David were left home alone. No one cooked their meals, washed their clothes, and so on. And one day, rats ran from the basement into the house, and only the intervention of a neighbor saved the children from numerous bites of dangerous rodents. Notes from a social worker. One Friday, he visited this mother with her children. The mother, drunk and aggressive, chased him away. The next day, he came with a policeman and saw a terrible picture. On the tables and on the floor, rotten food. Everywhere, piles of garbage, rat feces. Children went to the toilet directly on the floor. In the sink, a mountain of unwashed dishes with mold. The abundance of rats, cockroaches, bedbugs, and fleas was especially horrifying. The children lived in conditions with a lack of basic hygiene and safety. The mother was also throwing strong antidepressants and other medications everywhere that the children could have consumed. The daycare nanny's testimony. Both Jenna and David often came in with numerous flea bites and scratched the sore spots vigorously and suffered severe pain and itching. In addition, the attorney emphasized that when social workers brought his children to Kentucky at Philip's request, it did not make much difference to their situation. The father and stepmother did not pay attention to Jenna, even built her a room in the basement so that she did not disturb them. As a result, the girl moved from one disadvantage to another. After hearing Susan Hooper, prosecutor Richie Borms spoke and presented arguments proving that the father provided the children with everything they needed to live comfortably, especially in their new home, already with Rhonda. If Jenna and David had actually been abused and neglected in Kentucky, the relevant services would have been promptly alerted, for example, by teachers or neighbors. The prosecutor also singled out the persona of Kenneth Naik in this case. The guy was 20 years old and had an affair with a 15-year-old girl. Both Rhonda and Philip were very negative about such a union. Susan objected that this fact was known to her, and she did not see anything vicious in this connection. And Kenneth became the only loving and caring person for Jenna. In his person, she found someone who was older than her and whom she could trust completely. The girl had hidden emotional needs based on her past experiences, and Kenneth gave her some of the love, care, and attention she had come to expect from her own father. The defense also brought in another representative, attorney Anthony Lee Tainer. He tried to justify the girl's antics on the basis of scientific documentation. The materials reported that because of the abuse and horrible life in early childhood, Jenna developed psychological traumas. Prior to the trial, the lawyer repeatedly communicated with the defendant and concluded that she experienced an acute deficit in parental love. Her biological mother led an immoral lifestyle, and her relationship with her stepmother did not work out. And it was against this background that she became romantically involved with Kenneth Nake. The defendant agreed with the line of defense, once again apologized for what she had done, and admitted that she had been blinded by her love for Kenneth and had lost her mind for a while, and now felt tremendous pain for her crime. She's rethought a lot of things and transformed. That hysterical Jenna is a thing of the past. At that moment, her father approached the podium. The hall fell silent and tension reigned. Looking into her eyes, Philip asked, "Why did you commit this evil? Because of what motives?" After all, he had always respected his daughter, and Rhonda had warm feelings for her, and such a good-natured woman had never humiliated Jenna. And when the father brought his daughter and son to Kentucky, to a new home, all the conditions for comfortable and safe living were created. And Rhonda showed his children care as if they were her own children. Jenna was considered a troubled teenager, and Dad considered sending her to a reformatory to set her on the right path. But Rhonda dissuaded him from this measure, hoping that she herself will help the girl in a difficult situation. When it became known about the connection of the young daughter with 20-year-old Kenneth, her father called the guy a sexual hunter, looking for easy prey, and the naive little girl quickly fell into his web. At one family meeting, Jenna got a strict ban on seeing the guy, but the girl continued to date, albeit secretly. The father planned to contact the police about the matter, but took too long to visit the station. Philip Oakley was out of grief over the loss of Rhonda and expressed his daughter's extreme indignation. She acted very stupid and cruel. Her stepmother was a very kind, understanding, and caring woman. By killing her, Jenna had destroyed several destinies at once. In closing, the man added that he had seen those diary entries about the plans for elimination, both his, Rhonda's, and even David's. Jenna should not be seen as a victim in this story, as the defense suggests. The girl may have suffered from other circumstances, but let the investigation sort out the facts. Philip confessed his parental love to the defendant. She responded by crying and screaming that she had never considered him, her stepmother, or her brother as relatives, and that no one had ever loved her except Kenneth. The girl again became hysterical, and again the intervention of medics was required. The hearing had to be stopped. The hearing resumed on March 27, 2019. The defendant was in a calm state. There was silence in the hall. The judge read out the decision. 15 years of imprisonment. Of that, 10 for first-degree murder, 5 for stealing a car, to be served in a women's general prison. The defense side revived and resented the verdict, insisted on an amendment to the verdict to send Jenna not to a general prison, but to a juvenile correctional facility, and the girl should not serve her sentence together with adult women. The judge rejected such requests and did not change the verdict because the murder of Rhonda Raines Oakley was committed senselessly and with particular cruelty. The verdict was announced, and the defense attorneys got only small consolation. Their juvenile ward will go to jail for 15 years, not 18. The reason? They deducted 3 years of her stay in custody while the investigation was going on. Also, the guilty will be eligible for parole in 2034. The court hearing is over. The case is closed. The killer has been punished. Only her father still can't figure out the motives for such a brutal crime. And he is not satisfied with the official verdict. Too short a sentence. Should have been given at least 25 years. In the end, his daughter will only serve 15 years in prison. And he, David, and Rhonda's 4 children from her first marriage will always be trapped in the grief and pain of loss.